The ancient Norsemen harbored a profound dread of twilight. They ranked among the most vicious, bloodthirsty raiders across human history. Yet, their inner panic was so intense that upon a family member's passing, the household refused to move the deceased out through the main entryway. Instead, they would smash a gaping breach directly through the structure's wall, shove the corpse out through that sudden gap, and seal the barrier tightly right behind it. They were absolutely terrified that if it departed via the normal door, the spirit would recollect the path and wander back. Something lurking out there in the blackness frightened them far more than any mortal military ever could. Surprisingly, that very same darkness they deeply feared is precisely where a scattered collection of farmers reshaped themselves into the deadliest force on the planet. Up at the frozen peak of the world, winter brings much more than early twilight. It virtually wipes out the sun completely. Imagine the daylight vanishing in autumn and not truly returning until the arrival of spring. And it wasn't merely dark, it was absolutely fatal. Deeper inland on a clear night, the freezing air could plummet past -30 degrees Celsius, way below 0 Fahrenheit, frosty enough to end your life before daybreak. Consequently, for half the year, an entire family was locked inside a single dark, smoke-filled room while the night dragged on with no conclusion in sight. And trapped in that depth of blackness for so long, it becomes incredibly simple to imagine something is lurking outside. Something desperately trying to force its way in. Therefore, they crafted legends. And their very first myth explained precisely where all that terrifying darkness originated. They believed two massive cosmic wolves were relentlessly pursuing the sun across the heavens, and that one day they would capture it, swallow it whole, and submerge the earth in endless blackness forever. Every winter season, as the ambient light drained away, it genuinely appeared as though the wolves were winning the struggle. But those celestial wolves were merely one of the hazards waiting out there. Past the reach of the hearth fire, the darkness belonged entirely to the trolls. Colossal, lumbering beasts powerful enough to destroy a man, and they ruled the night because the single thing a troll could never survive was actual daylight. The very first contact with the rising sun would instantly turn its body into solid stone. Thus, when the night descended, the wise individuals remained indoors and waited for dawn. However, you didn't even need to step outdoors to face mortal peril. The most malicious forces targeted you inside while you rested. They referred to this entity as the Mara. It slipped into the residence at night, perched directly on your chest while you slept, and suffocated the breath out of you with horrifying dreams. You remained paralyzed. You couldn't even scream. You would simply awaken in the blackness gasping for air. It is almost certainly the exact condition we currently classify as sleep paralysis. That sudden shock of waking up frozen, absolutely certain some creature is crouching on your chest. And this Mara is precisely the source where we obtain our modern word nightmare. One ancient chronicle states a king of Sweden was literally suffocated to death by a Mara during his sleep, dispatched by a witch who desired his demise. And it didn't solely target human beings. Livestock owners would discover their horses in the morning drenched in sweat and trembling, their manes tangled into chaotic knots. But the Mara was not the entity they dreaded above all else. It was a physical corpse that dragged itself back out of the earth and walked. They termed this creature a Draugr. Not a transparent, harmless ghost, but the actual physical remains, bloated, decaying, and impossibly powerful. It could snap a horse's spine, and no living man possessed the strength to fight it off. The most dangerous among them corrupted the very ground surrounding them. In one specific saga, a Draugr became so incredibly toxic that birds flying above its resting place dropped dead straight out of the sky. Livestock perished in the pastures, and an entire inhabited valley had to be completely abandoned. And they wandered at night, worst of all during the absolute dead of winter. A barred door wouldn't keep one out. They could violently smash their way into a home and drag you outside. Now, recollect the deceased body they pushed through that hole in the structural wall? A dead man who discovered his path back home. To destroy a Draugr permanently, you had to excavate the grave, sever its head, and burn the entire corpse into ash. The most legendary of these monsters was a deceased shepherd named Glamour, who scaled onto the roof of the homestead at night and rode it, slamming his heels against the structural beams until the entire house shuddered. Anyone who encountered him out there either dropped dead on the spot from fright or completely lost their sanity. It required a legendary outcast named Grettir to wrestle the beast down to the ground in the pitch black. But as Glamour lay dying, a cloud drifted off the moon. The moonlight caught his shifting, dead eyes, and Grettir instantly froze. With his final breath, Glamour cursed him that he would remain terrified of the dark for the remainder of his life. And the curse worked. Grettir, the hero who slaughtered the monster, could never endure being alone in the dark ever again. Yet not every single Viking fled from the shadows. A few of them went actively searching for it. They even possessed a specific title for the practice, Útiseta, which translates simply to sitting out. A seeress was a woman the Norsemen believed could foresee the future. She would journey out entirely alone at night onto a burial mound and sit there in the freezing blackness for hours, attempting to reanimate the dead and extract secrets and prophecy from them. The populace believed in this magic so thoroughly that the legal system eventually outlawed it by name, calling it sitting out to awaken the trolls. Thus, while everyone else fortified their entryways against the deceased, she was out on a grave in the total blackness trying to summon them up. That identical darkness, the very element that filled them with terror, is also precisely where they became impossible to defeat. Because when the fireplace blazed high and the alcohol was flowing, that exact room transformed into something loud and chaotic. And they endured those lengthy nights executing something that sounds remarkably like modern culture. They engaged in rap battles. They termed it flyting, where two individuals would stand up and exchange insults at each other back and forth in poetic verse composed on the spot. In the most celebrated contest of all, the trickster deity Loki gatecrashes a banquet and attacks every single god in the room one after the other. He even charges Odin, the ruler of the pantheon, with practicing women's sorcery and creeping around disguised as a witch. And they aimed for blood. Your bravery, your physical appearance, whether you qualified as a real man at all. In a society where your personal reputation was the solitary item you truly possessed, freezing up with nothing to fire back could humiliate you for years. The Norsemen valued a sharp tongue almost as highly as a swift blade. And once a year, all of this intensity boiled over into the grandest celebration of the season. They called it Yule, the identical word we still associate with Christmas today. It persisted for days, overflowing with meat and drink at the exact period of winter when food was most difficult to find. They sacrificed livestock to the deities and stained the wooden walls with the blood to secure themselves a prosperous year ahead. And at the absolute climax of it, a warrior would rest his hand upon a sacred boar and pronounce an oath aloud in front of the entire gathering to conquer a specific battle or execute a certain foe. And once it was spoken, there was absolutely no taking it back. A hall packed with fighters would talk themselves into the upcoming summer's raids in the dead of winter, months before a solitary vessel ever departed the shoreline. The campaigns that terrified the whole of Europe did not initiate out on the open water. They originated in the dark around a hearth fire with a goblet of ale and a binding promise. But those sacred oaths were still merely words. Something massive had to transport all those warriors across the volatile sea and transform those words into blood and treasure. And the mechanism that accomplished it is the final thing you would ever guess. Visualize a Viking longship. You most likely visualize the timber, the hand-carved dragon head, the extended rows of oars. But the woodwork isn't what propelled that vessel across the vast ocean. The sail did. And that sail was constructed entirely of wool, which signifies that without a room packed with women spinning in the blackness, there is no Viking Age, just furious men with iron axes stranded on the coastline. A single sail needed wool from 1,000 sheep, all spun by hand. While we always picture the woodwork, making the fabric took 30 times longer, equating to 50 years of total labor. It took dozens of women working all winter in the dark just to finish one. Strip away the legends, and you're left with something ordinary, a room of people around a fire, terrified of the night. That was the Vikings, history's most feared warriors, fighting their own fears, just like us.